Today we are welcoming Michael Fairclough. He was the headmaster of the Rise Junior School in East Sussex, UK. He had the wisdom and the intestinal fortitude as a UK headmaster, head teacher, school principal to question COVID vaccine mandates and lockdowns. And he had some very strong opinions about how young people should be educated, such as it was. He has a book called The Hero's Voice, Finding Courage to Speak Out. And I thought it was actually Dr. Peter McCullough that said we should speak to him. He's got a lot to say, and I look forward to talking to him. As well as Brilyn Hollyhand. He's an 18-year-old political commentator and strategist, founder and editor-in-chief of the Truth Gazette. Generally, the theme today is Gen Z and beyond. Is there hope? Stay with us.
Our laws, as it pertains to substances, are draconian and bizarre. The psychopaths start this way. He was an alcoholic because of social media and pornography, PTSD, love addiction, fentanyl and heroin. Ridiculous. I'm a doctor, for sake. Where the hell do you think I learned that? I'm just saying, you go to treatment before you kill people. I am a clinician. I observe things about these chemicals. Let's just deal with what's real. We used to get these calls on Loveline all the time. Educate adolescents and to prevent and to treat. If you have trouble you can't stop and you want help stop it, I can help. I got a lot to say. I got a lot more to say.
Of course, I'm a fan of the healthy aging supplement True Niagen. I've been taking it almost for a decade myself. This supplement boosts NAD, which your cells need to survive properly metabolically, and it goes down as we age. It does so with a nutrient called nicotinamide riboside, or NR, specifically patented form of NR called Niagen. It's the most efficient and trusted NAD booster. NAD can also play a role in reproductive health. Boosting NAD is recommended with prenatal vitamins for women over 30 looking to start a family. Here's Dr. Amy, also known as the Egg Whisperer, a highly influential specialist in this area.
That was when I said, this is amazing. I need every single person going through fertility to take it. I not only take it myself, my patients have shared stories. They took it and then they got pregnant naturally. And that's really my goal, is I want people to empower themselves with the tools so that they can get pregnant without my help.
True Niagen is an amazing NAD booster. You're going to want to add it to your reproductive health arsenal. And of course, it's in our family of Dr. Drew sponsors. Go to drdrew.com/True Niagen for 20% off your order. That is drdrew.com/True Niagen. Enter Dr. Drew at checkout for 20% off. And of course, friends at True Niagen, I was reading this morning about the importance of the integrity of the mitochondria for preserving sarcopenia. You lose muscle as you age, and maintaining that integrity of the mitochondria may be a critical thing, and NR, of course, does that. And I want to talk about our friends. We formed a partnership, of course, our friends at Paleo Valley. We did not imagine we'd be talking about their grass-fed, pasture-raised meat sticks in the context of being stuck in traffic. Well, yet here we are, because I keep them everywhere. And this last weekend, Susan and I were crawling along on the freeway, and I keep them in every little pocket I have. Like many of you, I bet you were stuck in traffic last weekend. And I had packed a bunch of venison, beef, and chicken protein sticks, 50 to 70 calories, delicious, low calorie, high quality, packed with nutrients. The headache of the highway travel was more bearable, and I didn't go get food, which is, that's not good for you. That is, see, that stick, 50 calories in that thing, packed with protein and nutrients. And if you've never had them, now is the time to try. Take advantage of this first time orders offer. Get 30 sticks for $36. You need to use a special link created just for this audience. It is drdrew.com/PaleoValley30. Okay, drdrew.com/PaleoValley30, PaleoValley30. Get their stuff. It's very good. The bone broth, and now they have I don't have the bars with me, but they have very high quality bars and sticks as well.
I have a whole bunch of them in my car.
Yeah, and now you said you like that, was it the cinnamon apple protein bar now?
I like the lemon one.
Well, the thing about Paleo Valley is they source everything very, very carefully, very carefully. And you if you look at my interviews that's up on our what do you call them? Our library of interviews. The interviews, you'll be impressed with what the care she takes with the products. Okay, so let's quickly look at the upcoming guest here, if you guys don't mind. Tuesday, July 16th, we have Batya Ungar Sargon. She is the author of Second Class, how essentially the government, how our federal government at least has sold out the working class. I saw her speak. I thought that'd be very interesting to talk to her. 17th, this is very important. Dr. Joseph Fryman comes in, and also Dr. Ven Watson, who created Fatty 15. We're going to talk to her. She's another supplement that I can really get behind. But Fryman has the Hope Initiative flying around now, so he's going to convince me to sign that on the air. I saw it today. He just convinced Dr. Bhattacharya to sign it. He was concerned about throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Harvey Reich, Tommy Robinson, Dave Smith, July 23rd, Kelly Victory coming back with Harry Fisher. So a lot coming up. Pay attention. We continue to do Thursdays at noon rather than 3, while Susan's Calling Out show is at 3 o'clock. If you're interested, stop by. I may make a cameo appearance on that as well. Today, Fairclough, there we go. Fairclough, spelled Fairclough, Fairclough. So when you look for him on X, it's Mike Fairclough, Fairclough, as he and I were discussing off the air. For non-English speakers, is what drives them crazy about our language. Substack is at Mike Fairclough. Brilyn will be here in a few minutes. He has written a book also, One Generation Away, Why Now is the Time to Restore American Freedom. But Mike was the headmaster of a UK school in East Sussex and was summarily dismissed. This is a story we heard all too often during the darker days of COVID about people who stood up to speak truth to power, like our press was supposed to, and were suffering the consequences for it. And we should all be getting behind anybody who did so. So please welcome Mike Fairclough to the program. Mike, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Dr. Drew.
So let's go ahead, please do. There's going to be a little bit of delay because you were actually in the UK. So if we seem to jump on each other, it's not that. It's that there's a little delay coming from that great distance. So go ahead. You were just going to say.
Yeah, just to say, I think it's an important point to make that shockingly, I was the only UK head teacher or school principal to publicly question the COVID vaccine rollout to children. So there wasn't anyone else. I had lots of colleagues who privately agreed with me, so head teacher colleagues and school principals who said, we feel really uncomfortable about this. But they were saying to me, if I speak out, this was them speaking, there's a risk to my career and reputation, etc. So it was, I feel it's necessary to say that because this is the key point. It's not so much about me, it's about this whole issue of people self-censoring out of fear of reprisals. And when it comes to safeguarding children against harm, and particularly if you're in education or you're in the medical profession and you have a legal duty to safeguard children against harm, we've really got to get to a point where people are able to put their self-preservation on the back burner in favour of protecting children, and I think that's got to be the sort of key message. And if anything of benefit comes out of my experience, I want it to be that it highlights that issue and we can do something about it.
Well, let's dig into it a little bit. Not the specifics. I thought we were going to end up talking about some of your, which we'll get to, some of your feelings about how young people should be educated and raised. And but let's talk a little bit about this mass formation and the crowd think and the tribalism. I have found myself, I've just picked up Eric Larson's book in the Garden of Beasts, which is about the 1930s in Germany and how that quickly transformed into what it became. And it's exactly what you're talking about. It is precisely this phenomenon that we live through. And every one of those people that went along with this, I guarantee you, would tell you that they believe they would be one of the good guys in 1933 Germany. They never would have done that. They never would have gone along with that. When in reality, they would have been a prison guard or God knows what, because that's what happens to people who don't stand up and do the right thing. So how do we get people to admit this, and how do we get people to really examine themselves so they don't do this next time? And how do we educate young people so this doesn't happen to them? What do we do about all this? And what safeguards do we have to put in place?
Yeah. So first of all, I always hoped that I would be that kind of person. But actually, I thought in practice, if it ever came about, sort of obviously studied history and looked at things like Nazi Germany, etc. But I've also been, I haven't always been strong in my life. And there's been many, many examples where I've been quite flaky and I've kind of like given in and all that kind of stuff. But my red line was children. And I have 4 children of my own. I've got a 27-year-old called Tally, a 20-year-old called Iggy, and then 2 7-year-old twin daughters, Luna and Star. And at the time that I was speaking out, I had 365 children in the school where I was the head teacher. So that was my red line. It was when I could see that there was a possibility that those children could be injured or harmed in some way that I felt I needed to speak out. I was never comfortable doing so. And I was completely out of my comfort zone. And I'd had, prior to this time, I was like the number 1 head teacher in the country, really. I had wide, positive mainstream media coverage. I was in The Guardian, I was in The Times, I was in The Telegraph, I was on Channel 4 News. It was like, because basically I also ran a farm at my school, and we had a herd of water buffalo. We had a herd of sheep. I taught the children to shoot 410 shotguns and air rifles and stuff. And of course, that generated a lot of media interest. And but instead of it being seen in a negative light, it was celebrated by everyone. And I could do no wrong, really. I mean, I was giving every single child in my school could light a fire, cook over an open fire, and they did so every single week alongside their normal lessons of English, maths, history, science, etc. So I had I was used to kind of being in the public eye, but it was when I was doing, that's like where I come from, the countryside. I was brought up shooting, hunting, fishing, all that kind of stuff. I'd never been interested in like the medical world before, and I didn't really know about any of the things about Pfizer or anything until I started looking at it. But that was my red line when I was like, and I'll do the same if I saw a child crossing the road and there were no adults around to help them and there were cars all over the place. I would hope that other people would rush into the road and pick up the child and bring them back. But it was shocking that people who are charged with safeguarding children against harm didn't actually step up. Now, in terms of what to do about it, I started analysing this and writing down my thoughts during this period of time. And I'd been subjected to 3 investigations which had been commissioned by my former employer following anonymous, of course, whistleblowing complaints against me for speaking out. And each time that those happened, it was elevated in terms of the sort of severity. And I was kind of being framed as an extremist, really, even though I was actually saying everything in a lawful manner. And I was very careful in my communication to make sure that I was sticking to the facts. So I always used to say, with regards to the COVID vaccines for children, number 1, children are at extremely low risk of serious illness from COVID. Secondly, the COVID vaccines pose known various serious risks. Thirdly, there's no long-term safety data for the COVID vaccines. And finally, a child can still catch and spread COVID when vaccinated against the virus. So I just thought, let's just put that message out. And I was always thinking, I need to think about the fact that I could be talking to people who've got the completely different view to mine, or who are in the balance, and just try to inform people. And actually, just as a statistic, 89.5% of parents of 5 to 11-year-olds in the UK did not allow their children to have a single dose of the vaccine, right? So that means that the majority of parents presumably reached the same sort of conclusion as mine, even though they were silent. Now, in terms of the kind of thought process that I had, I started to write these things down because I felt isolated. I felt quite despairing at times. When I eventually lost my job, it obviously had an impact on my income and my family. I'd gone from having this excellent reputation to suddenly schools not wanting to employ me, and it had a big impact. But I started thinking, right, the best way to and maybe it's not a great sales pitch to do this, but I think the best way to encourage people to speak out about controversial or politically sensitive topics is not to pretend that you're somehow going to be rewarded at the other end, or that it's easy in any way, shape, or form. It requires us to move beyond our comfort zones. And so I started to look at the archetype of the mythological hero's quest as a really good model for the free speech quest, hence the title of my book, The Hero's Voice, where I look at Homer's Odyssey, for example. So all mythological heroes and all free speech questers will always begin the quest with huge resistance and thinking, look, I don't want to make my life more difficult than it already is. It's much safer in the short term to stay within the comfort of the known and certainty than to step out into the quest. But then, of course, one weighs up the pros and the cons of stepping out into the unknown. And in my case, I just thought, okay, if I'm silent, this problem is actually going to eventually come to my door, and it will be my children, my 7-year-old twin daughters, and the children in my school who could be subjected to this medical intervention where there's absolutely no long-term safety data, and for a virus which really poses them almost zero risk. So I thought, right, I need to step out. Now, using this kind of model of the hero's quest, and in the title of my book, The Hero's Voice, is very simply just to say, look, when you embark on this, and you might be talking about another controversial issue, say, I don't know, gender ideology in schools or something like that, again, which lots of people have a problem with, but they don't speak up about it. But to not to pretend that you're not going to experience kickbacks and attacks and moments when you feel despair and all of those sorts of things, but somehow through that journey you find the inner resources that you need in order to get through it and to achieve your end. And that's what happens in every single mythological quest. You find the resilience that you are so desperately wanting to find, and you find your allies along the way. And I must mention my wonderful wife, Sandeep Satara, as one of my wonderful companions and allies on my journey. I wouldn't have been able to do this without her. So I think there's also a spiritual component to the quest as well, where one kind of reflects on things on a very, very kind of deep level. But it's important to say that it's not easy, which is why people resist it. But you've got to always weigh up, okay, what are the possible downfalls of me not embarking on doing the right thing and speaking my truth.
So when I think about it, it's wonderful. And when I think about most of the great myths of history, Gilgamesh, Odysseus, whatever, whoever you want to reference, the hero comes home always. And he comes home with greater humility, but sometimes with greater levels of aggression too, to sort of take I don't want to say take revenge, but take away the power of those who had dislodged them, let's say. So am I saying that accurate? I'm thinking of Odysseus. Gilgamesh was a little more subdued and just came back and became king again. became king again. But in either case, they come home and go back to service. So are you home? Are you being rehired? Do you have to take some? I don't want to say revenge, but you have to dislodge some people in order to get them to not do that again. Where are you in the hero's journey?
I don't feel like I'm at the end yet. I think I'm still on that journey. There's There's something within Greek mythology called nostos, which is the kind of yearning for homecoming, and that navigates the hero on their quest. And it's always about returning home, and it's not necessarily a physical home. It's also a sense of connectedness and a sense of being whole. And I think for me, I've also been analyzing myself and thinking, okay, so I've been very sort of critical of the outside world in terms of their sort of silence about things, but I've had to look at myself as well and just think, okay, what parts of me can I change as well on this journey? So in terms of that humility that you referenced, that's definitely the case. But in terms of some sort of I know you're not really saying about like revenge, but sort of settling scores and things. I'm not actually interested in that.
Hang on, I want to stop you. It's not that, because I was careful how I chose my words. I almost said that. I said dislodge. That the people who have moved in who are not worthy of the positions they now have need to be dislodged. And I think about your government. I mean, the fact that they won't even look into these things is disgusting. Every time somebody comes in, I forget, there's one PM there or MP who's making an issue of this, and every time he speaks, the room empties out. What's wrong with these people? Maybe you should go for an MP position. That's where you need to go, my friend.
So I think there's lots of things which have to be taken into consideration with regards to the last 4 years and the whole kind of COVID pandemic. And a lot of it's to do with the censorship industrial complex, which has only really come to light in the last sort of 18 months. So one of the things that happened to me quite early on was I was deplatformed from Facebook, and well, not Facebook, I was kind of like put on bans on Facebook, YouTube, but completely kicked off Twitter, the first Twitter, and then I eventually submitted a subject access request to the Department for Culture, Media and Sport, which is part of the government, and it turned out that I'd been monitored by the Counter Disinformation Unit, and the Counter Disinformation Unit, which is an organisation which is run by the government, was working in liaison with the Rapid Response Unit. And then we later found out through a journalist called Isabel Okershott, who works for The Telegraph, which is a really good, really big mainstream newspaper, which I think has been quite balanced throughout this time. There was something called the Lockdown Files, and she interviewed for a book the former health secretary, Matt Hancock. And I mean, he was really naive, but he basically spilled the beans on a whole load of things. And it turned out that the intelligence agencies, so MI5, MI6, were working in liaison with the Counter Disinformation Unit and the Rapid Response Unit. There was something called the Psychological Nudge Unit, which was employed in order to steer public opinion. So all of that stuff that you were talking about at the beginning in terms of mass formation psychosis, this wasn't an organic kind of process. There were lots of mechanisms in place as well, something called the 77th Brigade, which is a unit of the British Army monitoring people online. So, and also a unit of the RAF as well, that's Royal Air Force. So serious organisations which were traditionally and previously were all eyes on traditional terrorists like ISIS and Al-Qaeda, etc. Suddenly we're looking at the domestic population and silencing debate. So I do have some empathy for some of the people who have attacked me, because I feel like they too have been the victim of this very nefarious censorship industrial complex. And I don't think that anyone actually wants to do harm to the children, with the exception perhaps of a few dark characters in the very kind of seat of these decision makers and the ones who continue to roll this out. But Joe blogs in the street, I think, they're generally good people, and that's why we need to get to the point where we can have discussions and open debate without everyone wanting to like kill each other just because they have a different religious or philosophical view or a different view about medical intervention. But of course, all of this sits within the wider context of these other organisations which were censoring, surveilling and silencing British citizens. And I know the same happened in the US and, well, across the world.
Oh, for sure. And, there's so much packed into what you just said. I just have a lot of thoughts. One was that your country has a long history of dealing with religious conflicts, let's say, and really how they found their way out of that might inform the present moment. I don't know whether it's, what happened in Ireland or what happened between Elizabeth and Mary. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that has gone on over the years that we don't have over here. We didn't have that anyway. We have other stuff. But I want to get at that 70%. Well, I'm using 70%. You talk about the people that attacked you that you believe were under the influence of the censorship industrial complex, which I completely agree with you. You mentioned Matthias Desmet, what he calls the mass formation. Yes, Matthias Desmet. And his position, which I believe is accurate, is that 20% of people get brainwashed quickly and they are hopeless. And they are the evangelists, they are whatever, they're people that, they're the prison guards in Nazi Germany, period. There is 10%, like yourself, that throw the BS flag early and go, hang on a second, wait a minute. And then there's 70% that just want to get along. And as you say, they are for sure good people, but they do bad things. And they need to be made aware that they're being under the influence of the mass formation, of the censorship complex, made them do things they should be at least examining, if not feeling very, very bad about. Do we need to raise that awareness, do you think?
Yeah, and again, I think this sits within the kind of wider context of the kind of culture that we have sort of created over the years. So I'm very fortunate actually. My late father, who died at the age of 86 about 6 years ago, his father, so my paternal grandfather, fought in the Battle of the Somme in World War I. So I grew up with stories of resilience. I mean, he was in the Cameron Highlanders as well. So they actually fought in kilts, and believe it or not, as they went over the trenches, there'd be a guy at the front of the line playing bagpipes as they walked into enemy fire. So and my father was Irish and brought up in a very with like hardly any money and had a hard life. And he was 10 years old when he was alive during World War II. And he told me stories of the bombs dropping on Manchester where he lived, because the Irish tended not to evacuate their kids. And I remember one particularly powerful story where he remembers at the beginning of the war where the bombs were dropping, and it was before they had an air raid shelter in their garden, and they hid under the kitchen table. And he said he remembers watching his father, who he regarded as a war hero, with his hand on the leg of the table, trembling, and he couldn't understand it. This 10-year-old boy, who was actually, he said he was quite excited by the sound of bombs, etc. And it was only later in life, when he read about the horrors of World War I, that he understood why his father was responding that manner. But the reason I tell this story is because over the years, over the generations since that time, we've kind of sought convenience and comfort, I think, to our detriment. And even things like people getting up in the morning and going to the gym seem like, really, really difficult. Perhaps that's why there's so many sort of quite large / obese people. And we don't, instead, unlike like in my house, we have fireplaces in every single room, and I light fires every single day. But back in the day, during my father's time, they had to light fires and cook over an open fire, etc. So I think we've got very used to things being easy and comfortable, and that's what people kind of strive for and look for. And I think that's at the root of the problem. We have to get people getting used to moving out of their comfort zones and understanding that that's how we make rapid leaps in our self-development on a spiritual level, on an emotional level, and on a kind of societal level as well.
Well, I want to talk more about that, because that's very interesting. I mean, as humans, we get used to things that are good and we get used to things that are bad. And things quickly go into the background for us unless we call it forward in some fashion. It stays in the background. So I want to talk about how we do exactly what you're talking about. Michael, let's put the book up again. Does the book have its own? And Mike Fairclough is is the Twitter handle. The Hero's Voice, there it is, Mike Fairclough, spelled Fairclough. Does the book have its own website or anything, Mike?
No, it doesn't. No. This is actually my fourth book. I've been an author since 2015, as well as a head teacher, and but I don't have kind of like other platforms really. I mean, you could, if, like, X is probably the best place to find me. But I'm really open to having conversations with individual people if they want to private message me or whatever. Like, as I said before, I'm in a position at the moment where I'm creating a kind of new life with my wife, and we've got a sort of yoga studio which we're kind of running at home. We call it the Temple in Sussex. Great. And we're also carrying on the outdoor learning, which I did with the children at my school, but with the children from the village at the weekends, etc. So, like, you know, teaching kids to skin rabbits and shoot pigeons and all that kind of stuff. And there's also a possibility, there's an opportunity that's come up in Bali as well, which I might take in October. But in the meantime, if there's anyone who's interested in collaborating, doing some educational work, or, you know, making some change, I'm interested in making positive change in the world, then please just get in direct contact with me, you know, possibly via DM on Twitter, X.
Okay, we're going to take a little break. I want to talk when we get back, right, a little bit more about what it is to get people out of their comfort zone and what you think are necessary for us to engage in that process of doing good. I'll be right back after this. Pay attention. Joint and muscle pains are exhausting and frustrating, but I've got a over-the-counter medication I'll introduce you to that provides great relief using the power of, check it out, chili peppers. Capsiden is made with a proprietary formula that contains no non-steroidal anti-inflammatory agents, no opioids, no anesthetic or steroid, nothing, no chance for addiction, no side effects, no chance it's going to interact with other medication you might be taking. Capsiden contains capsaicin, which is the substance in chili peppers that burns your tongue. That gives you that burny feeling. And of course, I've recommended capsaicin creams to patients over the years, but other capsaicin creams burn your skin. That's what makes Capsiden so unique. In clinical trials, Capsiden has actually been demonstrated not to burn.
I've been using Capsiden to relieve my pain in my hands and my wrist from carpal tunnel syndrome and arthritis. The results have been amazing. I use it every day during my show, and I highly recommend it.
Get the pain relief you need from various sources, even backache, sprains, bruises even. Order now at capsiden.com/Drew to get a 15% discount plus free shipping. That is CAPSADYN, capsiden.com/DREW. Many of us have not gotten over COVID. I'm not talking about the virus itself, but the response. We were flabbergasted about what the government could do to us. There is no telling what they might pull next time, and it's looking more like there will be a next time. So we all have to be what I call rationally ready. That's where the wellness company comes in. TWC is about access to physicians via telehealth, access to potentially life-saving medication. Years ago, having access to medication and telehealth might have seemed crazy, but now it seems crazy not to. Now, with claims that gain-of-function research have been done on the bird flu, I urge everyone to take control of their healthcare with the help of the wellness company. Go to drdrew.com/TWC for 10% off all their products, including the 4 medical kits, each of which has a different purpose. And we've added Tamiflu to one of them in case the bird flu does become a problem for humans. Be rationally ready. drdrew.com/TWC for 10% off.
Smell is sexy. Or sushi. Or Dr. Drupinski.
What?
Just want to highlight our friends at Capsiden very quickly. Reminder that I gave Capsiden to Dave Rubin yesterday, and he loves it because he'd been working out, my muscles have been bothering my shoulders, so I've been using it. I'm really impressed with Capsiden. Susan uses it for her hands and her carpal tunnel. It's been terrific. Capsiden, no burning, that's the key. I've been prescribing capsaicin for a long time, but it always burns the skin, not with Capsiden. Check it out. And of course, I talk a lot about well-being on the show, but your financial health, also important. We live in uncertain and volatile times. No one knows exactly exactly what's going to happen. It is crucial to protect yourself financially. Sleep well at night by investing in hard assets, including physical gold and silver. In 2024, gold and silver are surging, and experts predict they will continue to climb. I do not give financial advice. However, historically, these have been among the safest investments, allowing you to hedge against runaway inflation, for instance. I urge you to protect yourself and your investments. Gold Crest Metals can help you. Golden Crest, I beg your pardon. Golden Crest Metals can help you move a portion of your IRA into gold or silver. Call Golden Crest, GOLDENCREST, Golden Crest Metals now. The number is 833-426-3825, 833-426-3825 for a free guide on protecting your financial future with gold and silver. See if you qualify for up to $5,000 in free silver. That's 836-426-3825 or visit goldencrestmetals.com to request your free info guide. That again is goldencrest, CREST, metals.com. All right, then. So we're going to bring our friend Michael Fairclough back into the program here. And Susan, I don't know if you wanted to say anything about, you seem to be wanting to talk a little bit about your hands with the capsidin, but I have Mike back.
I was using it on my knee.
I
spread it on my leg today, and it loosened up the tightness in my knee.
So there you go.
It does work.
Mike Fairclough, we were talking about what to do with, amongst other things, the mass formation and how to keep people in the zone of doing good and helping people not fall into the comfort zone. I think that was your word, comfort zone.
Yes.
You know, it's interesting, before we get into that, you were talking about pushing back on the vaccine and how most British citizens realized that at least for certain age groups, there was no benefit and they weren't protecting anybody and they maybe were exposing kids to harm, so they didn't give them the vaccine. I was in France during the darkest hours of all this, and I was shocked to see the French youth demonstrating in the streets against the mandates. In the United States, the young people were completely brainwashed and demanding more mandates and more masks and more lockdowns. Their position was specific, which is how you've told us this thing is not dangerous for young people, and now you're going to force us to put something in our body that we're not really clear is safe and not going to do anything for us. How is that one of the founding principles of the French Republic? And I was really impressed with it. I don't know if it has continued. I know about all the Michigas in France right now, and whether or not those things have passed them by. But it's just odd to me that there seems to be here and there people that can kind of wake up. It's about waking up, isn't it?
Yes. Yes, it is. And just to say, in the UK, there was and continues to be a huge freedom movement. Sometimes it's referred to as the resistance as well. In terms of anti-lockdown protests, they were huge. One had approximately 1 million people in London, and they marched all the way up to the BBC headquarters and chanted outside them. Not a word on mainstream media at all from anyone, but of course, in this age of digital technology, it was all recorded and shared everywhere. So it's interesting that, and just to say as well, it's really interesting because, of course, anyone who was involved in those sorts of things was generally kind of cast as sort of far right, and therefore sort of the idea is that you know must be racist and anti-Semitic, like these really kind of weird sort of pejoratives. But actually, those freedom movements in the UK are so incredibly diverse. I mean, you've got like the average sort of freedom festival will have Black and Asian people and elderly people and kids there, and you know white English, and it's just so mixed. And I think one of the wonderful things about this time is it actually has woken a lot of people up, and myself included. I mean, I didn't have any sort of interest, as I said before, in the sort of medical world, and I come from a really healthy family and I'm healthy myself, so I didn't really kind of need to think about those things. But one Google search of Pfizer and finding out that they were the recipient of the largest criminal fine in US history in 2009, and then a long list of other things. It was that kind of woke me up to how sort of corrupt and compromised those organisations are, and then of course finding out later down the line all of the people who got kickbacks for promoting their product. So in the UK, there's been quite a few TV doctors who've been discovered they got payments. There are scientists who had payments as well, like as in government advisors, and of course, you know, all of that sort of all of that kind of corruption. So yeah, it's been a really interesting time and a really positive time in terms of the people waking up to things. But in terms of trying to get more people to speak their truth and to be able to talk about uncomfortable things, it's you know, that's why I've kind of looked at this whole kind of process. But actually, it's on the back of at least sort of 15 years of doing exactly that thing within the education system. So one of the things that I was well known for as a head teacher was the promotion of what's called character education, and that's underpinned by something called positive psychology. So it's looking at qualities and character traits which can be amplified in order to make us better and stronger people, and that includes, and the key to it is resilience. Now, the only way that you can develop resilience is by stepping out of your comfort zone. And just to mention my wife Sandeep Satara again, she's brilliant at doing this. She's a Punjabi Indian lady who was born in Africa, and she's like really sort of hardcore. And so like some of the time when I'm you know, wanting to kind of like take things down a few pegs, she'll be saying, right, let's kind of really go there, let's take these things to the next level. So for example, we live by the sea, and she gets us jumping in the cold water and swimming as often as we possibly can. We've recently started getting up at 3:30 in the morning to go out to our temple to kind of do our prayers, etc. So starting the day with something which is difficult and which is moving us out of our comfort zones, but where straight away we've achieved something and then we feel more empowered as a result. But there's other traits as well. So in addition to the resilience, I think it's important to generate a sense of gratitude and optimism. So particularly during times of challenge and struggle, to be able to list the many things that we're grateful for. Perhaps it's the health of our children or our relationships, or, you know, whatever it might be, however big or small that might be. And also having kind of optimism about the future, because I think moving forward, if we are really bleak about things and think, oh, we've had COVID and, you know, of course they're going to pull another thing like this again, and, you know, we're all doomed, you might as well give up now. Whereas if you have a sense of optimism and hope, that can kind of act as a guiding light as we move forward. So, you know, fortunately, I've had, you know, 14, 15 years of researching this stuff, talking about it, living it in my life as well. And I should mention as well, I had one of the things, my kind of benchmarks for things being difficult is close personal bereavements. So for example, the biological mother of my two eldest boys, there's Tally, whose house I'm staying in at the moment, and for this video, and Iggy, the 20-year-old, their mum and my wife died very suddenly 12 years ago, and prior to that, my sister and her children were all killed in a road accident. And I've had other close personal deaths of close friends. And, you know, when stuff like that happens, it kind of acts as a benchmark for other things. So suddenly things which other people might find more challenging are less so. And that's not to diminish the experience of speaking out and how difficult that's been, but it's certainly not as hard as someone close to me dying. So, you know, obviously one wouldn't wish that on anyone, but we can kind of create the conditions where we're able to build our resilience by doing difficult things, getting up early in the morning, going cold water swimming, making sure that we're exercising. You know, like if you go to the gym, there's always that resistance before you go to the gym. And then once you're there, you feel fantastic. But just staying within the comfort of the known and within the certainty and the ease of our lives, which basically we just become weak and therefore incredibly easy to manipulate. So I advocate this idea that moving beyond our comfort zone makes us stronger. But in order to do that, you have to feel some kind of discomfort and pain. And then you, of course, become stronger on lots of different levels.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm thinking about what you're saying about putting things in a sort of a context, or what priorities there are in life. And bereavement certainly is one of the great struggles for any human being, and it is important to, I hate to say it, but sort of lean into it as opposed to avoid it. It's just sort of, avoiding it leads to trouble. And whether you're avoiding it because you're keeping somebody alive and making that person suffer unnecessarily, or avoiding it because you don't want to feel it and you fall yourself into a depression, it has to be felt. It's part of life.
Yeah.
And being able to experience gratitude.
Culture,
Yeah.
So
Go
I was
ahead.
going to say, within our Western culture, death is in the closet still, really, compared to, say, Indian culture, or even like with my first wife, who was Italian and from like the old school. So they would have open coffins in Italy and all that kind of stuff. And I think it is painful, but by trying not to kind of gloss things over and just facing things in the moment, it does make it kind of easier actually in the long run. But I think that's just another indication of what's kind of slightly wrong about our culture. Death is going to happen to all of us. And in fact, it was weaponized during the COVID pandemic, wasn't it? It's like, this
Sure.
virus with an incredibly, I mean, in England, it was the average age of death was 83 with 4 comorbidities, which was actually higher than the average age of death generally. And yet everyone was like really scared that they might die of this virus, which caused them almost zero harm. And we were actually told that from the beginning. I mean, that was the thing. When it all kicked off, I remember Boris Johnson, the former prime minister, saying many of us will lose loved ones. And I should say that actually we didn't at that time know anything about COVID other than seeing these videos from China, which have now been debunked, of course. And this whole idea that there was this sort of
ridiculous.
almost like zombie apocalypse kind of spreading the world. And actually I closed my school before any other school in the country. It was only for like a week because then we had to kind of reopen. But it was really interesting because I just thought, wow, we've just been told many of us will lose loved ones. I've got 365 children, 60 members of staff. It's about 1,000 people I'm responsible for if you include the parents. And I thought, I've got to just say to them, if you want to keep your kids at home until we know what's going on, please do. And interestingly, the people who attacked me for doing that were exactly the same people who attacked me when I had the opposite view. So a few weeks later,
of course,
because I was like, I had to go back to school. We ended up with about 200 people, like 30 members of staff, about 150 children, and we're all a bit wary. And then the government said, oh, by the way, children aren't at risk. It was Chris Whitty, the chief medical officer for England, who said this, and he said, and most people are healthy, people are fine. So I just thought, oh, wonderful. Let's open up all of the schools properly. Let's open up the economy and let's crack on. No problem. Protect the vulnerable. That's the good thing to do. But apart from that, and then suddenly the people who criticised me for closing the school criticised me for saying that everything should be open. And the reason was because we hadn't been given permission from on high. So, I think there's an interesting, you mentioned mass formation psychosis. I think there's also obviously moral cowardice for the ones who did know that there was something wrong but didn't say anything about it. I think there's also another element, that whole Milgram experiment idea where people see dreadful things going on, but if somebody in authority is saying it's okay, then they go along with it. So we need to be empowering each other to be able to stand in our truth and to be able to, own where we're at and to be able to question things if we want to. But that really does begin with education and in schools, which is what I was actually doing. And it was celebrated until obviously the cardinal sin of questioning the COVID vaccines.
Please go back to it. It is going to be the quest of the next 10 or 20 years, I'm afraid, and it's going to take a while. I keep thinking about Odysseus as you're talking, and you talked about bereavement being a something that sidelined you a little bit. I think Odysseus kept complaining about hunger. If I remember right, he was always hungry, and he had trouble, and he had trouble sleeping, but when the time came, he took care of business. So I will look forward to you taking care of business. You're going to have to. You're very philosophical and you're very even and you're very spiritual, but I want to. You may have to wield a hammer at some point. I trust you to do so.
I'm still in the game in the sense that I'm still campaigning. I'm this opportunity in Bali is an educational opportunity. We'll see what happens. I'm doing it on a small level within my garden on my land with the local children. But I must say as well, it's like I've been inspired as well by other individuals who've been on in this game, and one of them is obviously Dr. Peter McCullough, who is responsible for me being here. He's helped me in the background throughout all of this time, and he's had all sorts of he's had to endure things that I've not had to endure, and I've found that inspiring, as well as Robert F. Kennedy as well, who's given me encouragement in the background thanks to Dr. McCullough, connecting us. And I look at somebody like Rob when I'm feeling a bit feeble and stuff. I would like watch a Robert Kennedy video, and it's like, oh wow, I need to step up now. I mean, this is a guy. It's like I was like, okay, so I'm not in education at the moment, and all of that kind of stuff. Poor me. But this guy hasn't even got Secret Service protection. He's up against like the biggest like sort of criminal organizations in the world. He's like completely ripped as well, which I find extraordinary. Every time I think, oh, maybe I'm not going to work out today, I'll like one of his videos comes up and I think I better.
Yeah.
So all of there's so many inspiring people around who've had it a lot worse and who are still fighting. So I think we can take a lot of inspiration from those people, as well as the mythological heroes and the people from the past. There are people right now who are modern day heroes, and those two gentlemen are right up there.
I completely agree with you. And McCullough is a dear friend and a great guy and an inspiration. And you brought in another mythical hero, and I'm not sure if you did that consciously when you said you caretaking within your garden. Suddenly we have Voltaire here in the room. Candide, his final words are, "We must cultivate our own garden." Was that a conscious reference when you said that?
No, it wasn't. No.
Yeah, well,
I'm glad you thought it was.
It's another one. It's another one. Yeah, so, okay, whatever, it's all good. But Voltaire said this long ago, whoever wrote Gilgamesh said it, and Homer, all referencing the same thing, as you have to come home and take care of your garden first, which includes your family, your literal garden if it needs to be, but also your community. Gilgamesh was the king, and that's why his garden included doing proper work in service of the community for which he was responsible. And that includes sometimes taking care of business. And I think that'll take a little while to kind of flush all this out. Mike, thank you so much for joining us. Good luck with the book. Good luck with your, I'm sure something's going to give here in terms of work. There's just no way it can't. And it's #1, Mike Fairclough on X. And here is a screenshot you can take of a QR code for the Hero's Voice. And hopefully we'll talk soon, Mike. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Drew. Thank you very much indeed.
You bet. Pleasure. I'll say hi to your friend, Peter McCullough. Send him your regards. All right. Now we are going to switch gears a little bit. We were in a sort of peripheral way talking about Gen Z. Now let's speak to an actual member of Gen Z, an 18-year-old who is a political commentator, strategist, founder and editor-in-chief of the Truth Gazette, a conservative news service established at the age of 11. Brilyn Hollyhand. I want to make sure I'm pronouncing his name right. Pronounce your name for me, my friend. I'm going to make sure I get it right.
You're all good as Brilyn, but thanks for having me, Dr. Drew. I appreciate it. I'm excited to be
Brilyn
here.
and Hollyhand is the last name.
Hollyhand,
is that correct?
yes,
or
sir.
Hollyhand? Hollyhand. Okay. Brilyn. Okay, got it. All right. One generation away is your book. Tell us about it.
Absolutely. So One Generation Away is 7 years of conversations with the American people. I first got started in politics at age 11, as you said, and I've spent the past 7 years traveling the country, Dr. Drew, talking with as many Americans as I could, but more importantly, listening to even more of them. And I'm hearing the same things that you're hearing from your audience as well. people don't really have hope in the future of America. My generation doesn't have hope that we're going to grow up in a free America. And I wanted to dispel that rumor. And so the message that I always close every single college campus speech with is my hope is in Jesus Christ alone, not in any DC bureaucrats. That's the message of this book. And it's really successful. It's currently #2 on Amazon, which is amazing. And we're just so excited to have the opportunity to talk to you about it.
And you said you're speaking in colleges. I'm surprised. I mean, they
Yes.
don't demonstrate and yell you down, or do you only choose certain kinds of colleges, or how's that work?
Oh yeah, no, we've got a lot of different places on both sides of the aisle. SEC is obviously friendly territory for me. I'm from the great state of Alabama. I actually live in Tuscaloosa, so the university is like 10 minutes from my house. So I'm familiar with the SEC, but you're exactly right. We've gone out of that bubble a little bit, and actually just had an email in my inbox a second ago from the Harvard College Republicans group asking us to go do something there too. So we've had some protests. We've also heard our fair share of people speaking out. I think I have about a half dozen death threats in my inbox every morning when I wake up. But you know what? That's part of it. That's what you get for speaking out. And I think that's why it's so difficult for me to encourage my peers to speak out. I mean, constantly and throughout this book and throughout those campus speeches, we're telling people, hey, if you're frustrated, say something, kind of speak out. But they're so terrified in modern day America of, first of all, cancel culture, and second of all, being canceled by their friends, family, community with those threats. So it's kind of terrifying, and it makes it even harder to have, comments when people talk today.
Do you engage with people that have differing views from yours, and what do you learn from them?
Yeah, I think you'll agree with this, but I have a chapter in the book about how I think that to heal America, we must have conversations. And so there's a chapter called Hard Conversations and the Path Forward. And I share 4 or 5 examples of times in my life where I've had really difficult conversations, and they actually came out to be really, really successful for my career. I'll give you one example. You mentioned I'm chairing the RNC's Youth Advisory Council, and obviously next week is the convention, and it's a really big week for our party. That's something that came about because I had a really difficult conversation with our party leadership. It was after the 2022 midterms. I was frustrated with the Republican Party's lack of performance. I thought that we should have done better. And there was a few week period there where people were blaming our candidates, people were blaming our messaging, people were blaming the party leaders. And I didn't think it was any of that. I thought it was our lack of youth engagement. I mean, the DNC founded a Youth Advisory Council in 2005. A Republican candidate has not won the youth vote in a presidential race in 2003. We had not been even entering this game, much less attempting to win. And so I thought that that's something that we needed to act on. And so I went on a network, called out the RNC, and had a text on my phone when I walked off set from the RNC chairwoman's assistant, and was like, can we have a meeting tomorrow morning? And I was like, oh my goodness, this is the first time I've ever heard from the RNC. Like, I'm about to get blacklisted. Like, they're so upset. Like, I just called them out on TV. This could not be good. So I had the meeting the next morning, and it was a Saturday morning. You'll know any meeting to happen on a Saturday morning in politics can never be too good for them to come into the office. And I was like, this can't be a good sign. And we walk in, and the chairwoman at the time says, I like the idea. And she knew that I disagree with her. She knew I had, some personal conflicts with her. Obviously, I just set up the day before, but she listened to me, and we had a hard conversation, and we left there saying, okay, we're going to start a council, and we're going to start youth engagement. Since then, President Trump is currently leading, yesterday morning, a New York Times poll, he's currently leading the youth vote by 8 points. Clearly, our youth engagement's working. All of that came from hard conversations. You're exactly right. We need more hard conversations in America.
So talk to us about what young people are thinking. I think millennials are sort of the ones that we hear from, or that we think of, or certainly that mainstream media reports from or about. We don't hear much from. You're just left high school recently. We don't know what they're thinking. Let me just frame this by saying my specific generation, like my age group, was really. It was at the end of the '60s. We weren't part of the '60s generation. We grew up watching that all happen, and we didn't want much to do with it. It didn't look too happy to us. Not only that, we saw a lot of them very quickly either end up dead or becoming stockbrokers. Like, weirdly, they seem disingenuous, and so so from my generation on back, all of a sudden you have sort of the '80s. That's kind of the '80s kind of came along with all that. And so these cusp generations, which sort of you represent, really, right? You're not millennial, and you're not. It's this next group. Are they looking at what's going on and kind of shaking their head and wanting something a little different?
I think they are, and it starts with you're exactly right. I'm going into my senior year of high school. This is an era of life where, and you remember the days of graduating high school. You remember the days of going off to college, registering to vote, renting your first apartment, living independently for the first time. That's a really important, milestone and era of your life. My peers and I are going into the era of life under a Biden economy. It's difficult enough for my parents and grandparents to live under this economy. It's even harder for my generation to get a start. Another example, and you were just talking about it with your guest before me, is COVID. We're the generation that grew up in COVID. I was in middle school when COVID hit. I was just coming out of elementary school. We saw big government at its worst.
Brilyn, I want to stop you. Two things. One, you should be disgusted with what they did to you, and you should never forget it. You should be furious, and all your peers should be furious. It's disgusting. It's inexcusable. I said it when it happened that 8 to 15-year-olds are going to be destroyed, and I hope they never forget it. You should live your life with one thing in mind, that this never happens again. Okay, that's number one. Absolutely. Number two, the group, and this is my pitch to you. And number two, the group ahead of you looks at the economy, goes, "Oh, the system is broken. We got to change everything." Which of course is just kind of ridiculous. But how come you guys don't go there?
Yeah, I think that we don't want to support a big government idea. We saw how bad big government was. We saw big government at its worst. Big government shut my generation out of our schools for a year and a half. Big government made me strap a diaper to my face. Big government, told me I was an evil person if I invited grandma over for Thanksgiving dinner. And so we saw how bad that is.
Stay focused there. Focus your messaging there, my friend. That's your future right there. You saw what they did to you. You should never get over it. Diaper to the face if you want, fine. But and maybe dangerous things in your arm for no good reason. Where do you want to go to college?
Yes. Yeah, I'm thinking of staying a little bit close to home. I've looked at some places up north, but I like SEC area.
Vanderbilt.
Okay, I haven't looked at that yet. We'll have to do that. Okay.
Oh, dude, my son went there. It's a great school. It's a great school.
Oh, cool.
And
nice.
Yeah, I spoke there. I spoke there a few times in the 90s, and I came home and I told all my kids, I go, you have to look at this school. Something is happening there. It's a kind of an extraordinary place. And my son's experience bore that out completely. So take a look. I don't know if they're completely on board with your point of view. I don't know what's going on there these days, but it's not New England. That's for sure.
It's not. Yeah.
No, it's not that. Well, listen, what is your plan going forward? What do you want people to know and do to help support you?
Yeah, absolutely. So the book just came out this Tuesday. Like we said, it's already become a bestseller, which is amazing. And it's really cool to see the American dream alive and well, that an 18-year-old can have a best-selling book here in this nation. Your audience can get signed copies at browonbook.com. You can follow me on social media at Brilyn Hollyhand. We're just really trying to get young people involved, both sides of the aisle. This is completely bipartisan. Get everybody registered to vote and get them, making a plan to vote. Because again, think of the typical high school college student. Tuesday, November 5th is a typical Tuesday to them. They're going to classes, they're going to work, they're going to hang out with their friends. Until we tell them, hey, take the 10 to 15 minutes, make sure you cast your vote. The stakes couldn't be higher. They're not going to have any ideas. So we're trying to get that message out, and we just appreciate your help with that.
All right, listen, I have a feeling I'm going to need to talk to you more as things evolve. There's particularly in terms of engagement and getting people out of their silos and getting everyone talking again. I think you might be important in that process. All right, Brilyn, thank you so much for joining us, and congratulations on the book, and good luck with college, and good luck with whatever comes next for you. We'll be applauding and checking in.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity. Have a good week.
You got it. Thank you so much. Speaking of that week, let's talk about what's coming up for us. As I said, we've got the author on the with Susan Pinsky tonight at 3 o'clock. Day at 3 o'clock. Check that out. I'm going to stop by on that. But Bancha, who wrote
Calling Out to Your Spirits, Dr. Drew.
Second class, Batya, who really talks about how the government has sold out the working class. We're talking about that. And Joseph Fryman, you guys know him from the last two interviews we've done with him. He'll be here on the 17th. He has a new Hope initiative about getting, you will all be very inspired by that initiative. You might check out what Jay Bhattacharya is tweeting about it today. Tommy Robinson, Harvey Reish on the 18th, Dave Smith on the 23rd. We're looking forward to that. Kelly Victory coming on back around with Harry Fisher. So we got a lot, and I keep poor Emily Barsh. I throw her people I want to talk to all the time, and she goes after them. We've got some very high-profile people potentially coming our way, so keep an eye out for that. Susan, anything from your standpoint?
Just trying to let everybody...
No mic on for you.
Oh, sorry. Such a good tech person. Yeah, I was just going to put up all the posts for Calling Out with Susan Pinsky. So we have YouTube Calling Out, but also it'll be on the Dr. Drew YouTube for anybody who's out there. X, First Lady of Love. So if you want to see it on X, we had a big following there last week. Also rumble.com/Dr. Drew or Calling Out. Hopefully we'll see our Rumble friends over there at 3:00. And we have YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, the Dr. Drew Twitch, and then my First Lady of Love Facebook. So if you watched it last week, we really appreciate it. We saw a lot of numbers. I don't know if you guys were just looking to see what the hell it was and you didn't like it or you did like it. I'd love to know if you did. And we're going to have a comedian in the house with a clairvoyant, Rebecca
Today?
Fearing. Yes.
Yeah. Well, Annie Lederman, I can say who?
Annie Lederman, yeah.
Annie Lederman, who is a great friend and a great comedian. And
She makes it over here with the traffic. We'll see.
she's coming all the way out here. It's crazy. Okay, I'm looking at the restream, guys. You said Dolphin Bear has been very active. Thank you. Fantastic guest, she says, or he says. I'm not sure. I think it's a she. And Susan, were you watching the restream or the Rumble Rants at all? I didn't have a chance to look too much down.
I'm running around.
And keep in mind, we are doing a noontime on Thursday, so Susan can do this show. I don't think Vince is going to make it today, possibly.
He was a surprise anyways. Nobody knows.
Okay, well,
you don't need to tell.
Now the surprise is that he's not coming.
His dog. Oh, yeah, don't put that up. We have to take that down. Yeah, his dog's in the hospital. So.
What's that, Caleb?
Oh, well, never mind. I'll figure that out after.
Did I give you the bad? Did I give you the bad news, Caleb?
Yeah. It would have been great
to know
that
during the show
before I made all the promos for the show happening in a couple hours. But I'll get on it.
It literally just happened. No, Caleb, it just happened.
Oh, okay.
I just heard about it.
I
It just happened.
I figure it's fine.
told
it's fine.
you
I'll
not
figure
to
it
Moping
post it.
around like,
I'll figure it out.
No,
I'll make it
I
work.
mean somebody's doggy's in the
I
hospital.
get to talk to her during
okay.
the little ad. I get to talk to her during the little ad breaks, and you don't.
I don't know. He may pop in, but he's supposed to be my top secret guest that nobody knew was coming, and he's not coming, so it doesn't matter. Nobody knows. So, no, it's all right. I always produce extra people on my show. It's not like when you're booking a doctor or a professional who they say they're going to show up, and they do. There's always a flake, so I always overbook my shows. That's just I'm used to it.
So I just enjoyed the hell out of the guests we've been talking to the last few weeks, and I appreciate you all joining us. And if you want to look back at some of the previous shows, we appreciate that too, because it's just been a great opportunity. It's this, when I was talking to Mike Fairclough today, I'm thinking to myself, yes, this thing blew everything apart. Yes, what they did was inexcusable. Yes, it can't happen again, but it created interesting bedfellows. It created interesting opportunity. It created relationships with audiences and methods of delivery of material for those audiences that just wouldn't have happened or would have taken a lot longer to happen had it not been for it. So again, it is, what should we call it? Creativity that gets us through these things and makes things interesting and makes it all not just bad. Still, don't get over it. It should not happen again. A lot of people, like you heard the young Brilyn was just saying, were affected for the rest of their life by it, and they should not forget it. All right, so we will see you either today at 3:00 for Susan's program or Tuesday at 3 p.m. Pacific time. We will be looking forward to that. Thank you so much for being here.
Ta-ta.
Ask Dr. Drew is produced by Caleb Nation and Susan Pinsky. As a reminder, the discussions here are not a substitute for medical care, diagnosis, or treatment. This show is intended for educational and informational purposes only. I am a licensed physician, but I am not a replacement for your personal doctor, and I am not practicing medicine here. Always remember that our understanding of medicine and science is constantly evolving. Though my opinion is based on the information that is available to me today, some of the contents of this show could be outdated in the future. Be sure to check with trusted resources in case any of the information has been updated since this was published. If you or someone you know is in immediate danger, don't call me, call 911. If you're feeling hopeless or suicidal, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255. You can find more of my recommended organizations and helpful resources at drdrew.com/help.